Hi everyone, welcome back to our video series on Java PowerShell project. And in this particular one, we're going to continue on our project. We've done pretty much the graphical user interface. We've made our class that is allowing us to actually execute PowerShell commands. And now we're just gonna combine them all together. So this is basically the glue or just a highlight points on how I made them work all together. So before we start, I'm gonna show you my PowerShell command, Java. Okay, this particular one, in the previous video, we've already discussed how to actually run runtime, get runtime exec, and this is the command. Okay, so rather than just having it in one method in the main class, which is for us, it's going to be YouTube PowerShell project app. Okay, that is where our main resides. I made it a separate class to make sure that it's reusable. So in this class, I say PowerShell command public static because I want it to be a static. So what does that mean? That means I can call this particular method without having to create the object itself. So for some people, they call it a auxiliary or utility class. So it's basically just a utility class or an object that you can just use the methods to perform certain actions. For this one, again, this is the same code that we made in the previous video. Just a quick run through. This is string line. This is where we're gonna store our particular line. Okay, and here we have buffer reader, standard out, buffer reader, input stream, and PowerShell. We're gonna get the input stream. Okay, as you probably, if you don't watch the previous video, if you did watch the previous video, if you remember that the description for this particular method was the input stream actually gets the output of the exec command that we actually performing. So again, after we get that, we read each line and we put it in the process output. Okay, and then we close the standard output buffer reader. Then we do another buffer reader. For this one, in this particular one, we're actually getting the error stream. If there's anything error that pops up from that particular execution, it will then be saved in this particular process output again, and then we will then produce it here. Okay, so we don't have to worry about overriding it because this one will produce our output stream for both instances. So it will hold both of them because we're not overriding it, we're just adding it to. So if you're a bit confused about this one, I do implore you to watch the previous video if you haven't, or if you still need some more refresher on this, you can please watch the previous video as well. The only difference in this particular one is we made it a dedicated class and we had a public static method here, so we can actually run the command itself. Okay, so and then this static method also returns the string. So as a test, if we were just to test it out without having the graphical user interface for this one, I'm just gonna comment this out. Okay, and I am simply gonna say PowerShell command and run command. The command I'm gonna run is PowerShell exe, and again we're gonna say maybe get process because that's fairly straightforward. And I'm gonna say name's gonna be fire because I always do fire from my previous videos as well, Firefox. So if we run this, let me say PowerShell PowerShell run command. It does take in a string for the command. Okay, and let's just see what is it angry. Okay, because it says here throw an IO exception, because this particular class, if you notice here, it does say throw IO exception. So I'm just gonna catch it. Okay, I'm gonna catch. Oh wait, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna catch, as I said I was gonna catch it. Try catch. Okay, now we have a try catch for this particular one. So you're gonna run it just to show you that it works. It's gonna take a while, blah blah blah. And then build successful. It does work, but you have to remember it returns a string, so we actually have to put it in here just to be sure. Okay, now we run it again. As you can see, now we get the output and then there's no errors. Okay, just to be sure that you understand how it goes. So again, this particular one, it's a static method, public static method that returns a string, and it takes in a string, and that string is supposed to represent the command. So that's how we set it up. Okay, let's undo all this and return back to our undo. Okay, now that's back there. So let's just run again. Now we can open our graphical user interface. Okay, that's done. Let's proceed to the next one. So I've already explained you how we run that, and we're gonna go to our PSC frame. In our PSC exec frame, I used, if you didn't watch the previous one, I actually used the JFrame form to actually get this up and running. In the JFrame form, okay, let's just make this bigger. In the JFrame form, I made all the necessary elements, the buttons, the progress bars, and everything. I mainly added my own methods for my action listeners. In the methods for the action listeners, this is what we did. Okay, you can disregard all this, the additional stuff, because that's the same as the one that was made. So in this one, we have JProgress button. So basically JProgress button, JClear button, and then JInvalidCert button. This particular one is what we would run for the invalid certificate. So we're not gonna show that now. I'm just gonna show you a simple one right here. As you can see, for this particular one, get progress, it's actually not progress. It was supposed to be process. Sorry for the misspelled. So we're just gonna leave it there as long as you understand. So it's actually process. So I want to refactor this, but for all intents and purposes, you do understand what I'm saying. So for this button, it will then execute the PowerShell exe get process. The one we did previously, the same thing. And then in this particular instance, this is the command, we actually go to the progress bar. As you remember in the previous video, or I will reiterate here, this progress bar needs to be in line to what we want to execute. So it's going to be here, and let's go to progress bar. In the progress bar, this is where we actually use the myWorker extends SwingWorker. Okay, what is SwingWorker? Okay, let's go to here. SwingWorker program needs to execute a long-running task. Okay, long-running task. That means the task is going to be long. Okay, and it uses one of the worker threads, also known as the background thread. Here's the thing: if we had a progress bar and we did it like the previous example, if you notice in the previous video, it would actually wait until the previous action is done before showing us the graphical representation of the progress bar. Okay, but in this instance, we want to actually allow for the command to run and for the progress bar to show us the progress. Okay, so what do we need to do here? Okay, let's go back to this one before now. So the SwingWorker here, okay, each task runs on a worker thread as represented in the instance of SwingWorker. So the main point I want you to take from here is that we can run a background thread, okay, background thread, while we're actually performing the PowerShell command. So what I'm doing here, so Java class, worker class, okay, SwingWorker, extend SwingWorker. We're going to override the protected method here, do in background, okay. So do in background is all this. So what am I going to do in the background? I will make my JProgress bar string says loading. I'm also going to make sure it's visible. And for the progress bar, unlike the previous example where we know it's going to count from 1 to 100 or 100 to 1, that's deterministic. So we're going to set here, set indeterminate to true. That means we do not know when this is going to end. So it will go back and forth, back and forth. Okay. So in this, we're just doing a try catch. Okay, because this again produces an will throw an IO exception, so it needs to be captured. So try and catch. So in this particular one, JText area as well, set text to S. Okay, because why? Because remember, this particular run command will produce the output and return us a string. So I'm gonna just I'm gonna just put it in the reference here. My reference, the variable for that is S. So I'm gonna say my JText area is then, once this is done, we will change the JText area from a blank to whatever output is passed to us. Okay, one that is said and done, we will return the word done. Okay, so here public void done. Okay, what is this? What does this done do? Basically, what does done do is JProgressBar set indeterminate to false. Basically, it will stop the bar from moving back and forth and will change the bar string to action complete. And at the final end here, we're just going to go my worker, because in this my worker, we have .execute. So it actually runs it and make sure that this is all running. Okay, the nitty-gritty portion or all the complexities, you can actually go and check it yourself. So again, if you want to go to here, so this one, you know that it implements runnable future. And if you check, we also have execute here as well if you want to get more information. Okay, for this particular video, we're not going to go through that. I'm just going to go give you a quick overview on how I get to have my progress bar running, as well as doing the PowerShell commands. Yeah, so this is pretty straightforward. This is pretty easy because we're just running a single command here. So let's just run this. And if I say get process, this is what I mean. You see that type of progress bar is called indeterminate. And this is the command. Okay, so I can say clear output. For clear output, this is the next thing we're going to look at. Clear output is actually very simple. Okay, clear output basically just clears the screen or the JText area. So clear button action perform. As you see here, JText area set text to nothing. Okay, and I'm also going to say JProgress bar select an action below, because I want to reset the message from the JProgress bar. As simple as that. That is as simple as that. So let's say you want to change here, and then the one we did just now for name, fire. Okay, run this. Okay, and then get process. Now this is all going to be for just Firefox. And then clear, as you see here, action complete. Clear output, select action below. Get process, it says loading just now, and then clear output. So that is the simple part. That is the simple part. The part that we want to focus on next is this one. Get invalid action certificate. Okay, I just want to refresh your idea on what we did there. So we'll get invalid certificate. Okay, it's gonna be this part is where it's gonna be a bit long because it's loading, because it's trying to get that certificate going back to us. Okay, is this process valid? Valid certificate. Is this process valid? So it's gonna take a while. So once it's done, okay, it's still loading. Now once it's done, I export that to a CSV. That CSV then gets opened in Excel, and Excel then executes the macros. So in this particular portion, we're gonna just go through a quick overview on how I got my macros. The simplest way, of course, because you want to make it simple, because simple is usually repeatable as well. So this is our output. Hopefully you still remember how we got the script to run, because we had a comprehensive video for that one. If not, again, you can watch it. Okay. So how do we do that? First of all, I am going to show you how I record my Excel macros. So I'm going to open Excel. I'm not going to show you the whole formatting, but because you'll get the idea after I do this. First thing first, you have to have your developer tab enabled. Let's say if you don't have the developer tab, you go to File. Here you go to Options, File, Options, and you go to, where is it? Custom ribbon, and you select here. Okay, or you go to popular commands. You select here, and then make sure you select that one, and then just add it. So here's developer. I've already added developer to my main tab. Okay, so that's just a quick overview again. If you don't know, you go to custom ribbon, find developer tab, and then just add it to your main tab. Okay, once you have developer tab, okay, you're gonna record a macro. So here you have Visual Basics, macro, and record macro. It is as simple as that. So I'm gonna record a macro here. I'm gonna call this macro YouTube. Maybe just call it YouTube, just for now. And it's gonna be stored in my personal macro workbook. So I'm gonna say okay. For here, it's already recording. So I'm just gonna do something simple. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna copy down. Okay. And I'm gonna go home, and I'm gonna say format table, and this is my table. I'm gonna say okay. And then I go back to developer, and I say stop. Right? That is the macro. So how do we know that the macro is there? If you click on macro, okay, you have now personal Excel SB, bang, or exclamation mark, and then YouTube. Okay, that is your macro. So let's run it again. So I'm going to open a new book. So this is book 2. As you can see, this is book 2, this is book 1. How do I get to run it? I go to developer. Okay, I go to macro. I select my YouTube one, and I say run. And that is the macro. That is how simple it is to actually get a macro saved for your Excel workbook. Okay, so I'm not gonna save that. Oh wait, before that, I'm gonna show you the macro where I saved the previous macro. So I'm gonna say Visual Basics. So this is Visual Basics. If you see here, this is module 1, 2, and 3. The macro that I use for our project is this one. Cert stat format report. That's the macro. So how do we actually get to use this? In our PowerShell script? So I'm going to close this, X, don't save, X, don't save. Okay, now, how do we actually get to use it? First thing first, you have to find that basically your personal macro book. So that personal macro book, if you want to find it, okay, this is the path. So I'm going to say open notepad here so you can actually get a screenshot of it. Okay, notepad. This is where you need to find it. Okay, this is where the macros is stored. So you have to find this first. So you copy here, you open my computer, and this is where you find it. So I want you to copy this, copy that, and actually put it in your project folder. So this is where I have it. I've copied this personal XLSB, okay, my Excel binary workbook, and I pasted it here. As well as all your Java scripts. So you notice that we ran it just now. When we ran that previously, get invalid certificate, it actually checks cert export format. PS1. That is the one that we use for our PowerShell script. So let's open PowerShell. This is the one we have, right? And I'm going to open it to that location. So this is the script. Let's see, is that the one? Yeah, that is the one. Okay, good. So I'm going to open it. So this is the one we have. This one actually, again, gets the table ready. PowerShell, you see. I'll explain to you later what is execution policy bypass, because once we run this, you will see it. And then this is the variable PSS script root. This is where you, the variable that holds the position, okay, the position of the directory that you open the script from. Okay, this is very important because we don't want to type it in every single time, and you don't want it to make the directory to be static. You want it to be wherever you open the script, that is where it will find all the other script that you are referencing it from. Okay, now we're gonna open that one just to show you I didn't change anything. This PS cert export. PS cert export. Okay, this is the one we did previously in one of the previous videos for PowerShell as our development to get to where we are now. So I did this. The primary difference is I pipe it to export CSV, non-type information, path. This is what I said. Wherever that location of where we ran the script from, I want you to make process_cert.csv. This is where you're going to export it to. Okay. All this portion, if you are not familiar with it, again, I suggest you to watch the previous video on how we got to this particular script. Okay, now that's gonna run. Okay, this is the Excel. You're gonna say a variable name Excel. I'm gonna say new object, and then this object, object, I'm gonna say Excel application. Okay, basically this one just says this is gonna represent my Excel application if I want to reference it in the future. Okay, and then open macro. This is very important. Again, that macro is stored in personal.xlsb. Okay, so this is where we're gonna open the workbook and open the macro. For file path, this is where we're gonna tell it, okay, this is the CSV that we want to apply the macro on. So I'm gonna open this as an Excel workbook. Okay, this is the parameters 0 and false. You don't have to worry about that part. That basically just bring it raw. Okay, and then once it's done, it will then apply the macro. It will apply the macro. So this is it, Excel application. This part is just visible. That means you want to show it being open. Enable events as well. So whatever activity it is, and display alerts if there's any wrong or errors that might have happened. Okay. For this particular one, access application, the run macro, this is when we actually run it. Excel application. And then we say run to. This is what we want. So remember when I said this now, this is the where we hold the macros. This is actually the name of the macro it is itself. So search stat format report. So this is everything that we have here. So now I'll say I want to run this. You see here, this is one of the things that you have to know. When you run a PowerShell script, it will say this cannot load because script is disabled on this system. So in order for us to be able to run this is where we do this execution policy bypass. This is inside the script itself. So this is not to run the actual script, which is search check export format. This is to run the script process search check export. Okay, so in order for us to do that, I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste it here, and I'm going to copy this as well. Okay, and I'm going to do that and that just to make sure that all the string is okay, because sometimes there's spaces, but for me I don't like spaces in my file directory, so that's why I always have an underscore or a dash for it. So then you can run it, and this will then run. Again, This will take a while because it's gonna run this script, which actually gets the code signature. And after it gets the signature, then it'll export the CSV. And then once the CSV is done, we will then do all of this to the Excel itself. So let's wait for a bit. And then you can see it opens as we expect it to. Okay, now I don't want to save this. So now we know that this script works. Now we know that this script works. So we can close this. Let's go back to our invalid cert action perform. If you were to be easy, and you can actually tell this and then you actually put in the full directory path. But for me, I decided to have a separate method to find where the script is running. If you notice here, it says here PowerShell the YouTube project check cert, and this is the check cert export format PS1. This directory was actually added to this section of the string, So how do I get it to be like that? Okay, script directory location. This is the method. Okay, it will return a string. If you're used to how to open a file, you probably know that there's a path class that you can actually get the path for a file. So you just pass it a file name. So again, this is the file name that's being passed. So it's getting a file name. So it says file name. This will actually return you the path variable. So from here, you just say get path to absolute path. That means this will change it to an absolute path. And then after that, you change that absolute path to string. So that after you get all this, this is what it results to. The single quotation part, because they have the single quotation there, and the actual path up to here, right? Up to there. So this makes it a bit more nimble in your code because you can actually just move it around. It makes it a bit more nimble because you don't have to make the file static. Like rather than saying D:, where it is, you can just change it and move the folder around without affecting your actual implementation. So if let's say we move the folder, our folders now, rather than putting it into D, we put it into E or G. And if we put in a static directory here, it will actually break the code. So this is why I implemented this. Again, you have path class to get the path variable with the use of get, and then you just need to make sure to absolute path and to string to get it to be a string that you can actually use for your PowerShell command. Okay, that is that part. So now we have all the components here to actually perform what we wanted to do. The additional part, that's the additional part right now, is now let's continue to make sure that this is ready for other people to use. So for that, we need to make sure it's in a jar file. So I'm gonna go to my project, okay, and I am gonna say clean and build. It's building and is now successful. It is now successful. So we have here a jar file. Why do you need a jar file? Because it's going to be easier for us to make our batch file to run this. Now we have that jar file. Let's go see where that jar file actually lives. So let's go back to our directory where we have our, this is our project. We go to distribution. This is our jar file. This is our jar file. So now next thing we want to do is to actually make a batch file. So what do we need to make a batch file? So just to make it easier for us to run it, and maybe create a shortcut somewhere on the company's desktop or the admin's desktop, so they don't have to go to the folder and try to find it. Okay, so let's just make a batch file here. So we say new text file. So let's just say here PS yeah, PS Java, and the extension would be a bat file. Okay, yes, and we're gonna open this. Close. We're not gonna run it. We're gonna edit first. So properties, and then say edit. Edit. Okay, here. So first thing I'm gonna say echo off, of course, because I don't want to show everything. So I'm gonna say echo off. And then here for a batch file, we're gonna say start. What do we want to start? So start Java. For this one, make sure you have all your parameter variables set for your computer so it recognizes that Java is actually what it's supposed to be. So that's a separate video if you want to look at it, just to find your Java environment and everything is set up properly for that particular machine. So if you do copy this file into somewhere but it doesn't recognize Java, this batch file will not run. So that's just my 2 cents, just as a reminder as well. So Java, what we're gonna do is a jar file, and we're gonna pass it the directory. What is the directory? So we're gonna tell it to use the current directory, which is being used as a %, tilde or the squiggly line, and dp0. This tells it where the current directory is, and let's go find where the jar file is. So it's distribution, and this is the name of the jar file. Okay, that's the name of the jar file. So we're gonna, it's gonna be distribution here. Okay, we're gonna paste that here. Okay, because it is where we currently reside, and then we're gonna copy the name of the jar file. Sorry, copy the name of the name. What is that supposed to mean? Okay, we're gonna copy the name of the jar file with the extension itself, and that should be it. So we save this and go back, and let's run our batch file. This is our batch file. Run. You can see here now we've successfully run this. We can say continue. We can say get process. We can get invalid cert, and it will run the background. Okay, you see here this particular command in the back, this background. Okay, for this particular one, it's for troubleshooting, just to see what other outputs or what the line prints that you actually made. For me, I actually made this line print to make sure that it is actually finding the right directory. Okay, now that's run, and you can see the same results again. So I'm gonna close this, and close that as well. So I'm gonna edit this again. So edit. So now rather than say Java, we say Java W, because we don't want to see that thing in the back. I'm gonna save. Sorry, excuse me. So I'm gonna run my batch file again, and as you can see, we do not see that console again. So again, if you don't have W, we save, we run, you will see the console. This is good for when you're troubleshooting. Okay, this is good for when you're troubleshooting. But then for all intents and purposes, when you're actually using it in a working environment, okay, you can just say Java W there and run it, and it will show this, and you don't have to see the black screen or console screen again. So what do I like to do? This is just a final point to close off this video series. What I like to do is, on the admin PC, if I was to give this to a coworker, maybe a junior staff member or anybody else to use it on the admin PC, I will actually make a shortcut for this. There are more options, and I am gonna make a shortcut. Create shortcut. On the shortcut, just to make sure it's visible for everybody, I'm gonna say property. Okay, change icon. Don't worry about that one. I'm just gonna change the icon. So you can choose any icons here. Let's say maybe this one or a star, just to make it stand out a bit more. And apply, and okay, so now it's the star. So and then I will copy this to a desktop, or usually there's a folder for all our tools that we made for our working environment. So it's a desktop, might be a tool, so we can just now move this shortcut around. So let's say I just move the shortcut, move it here. I'm gonna maybe go here and make another folder, new folder, test folder, and over here I'm gonna paste that shortcut. So if you run the shortcut again, it will open it here as well. So you don't have to muck around and move around that folder to get the same results. Okay, that is it for this video series. So I hope that you've enjoyed this video series as much as I have enjoyed in making this. Excuse me, sorry. I certainly learned a lot. I would say a lot from this video series, from PowerShell to Java. Java, the main point is to get that class to run the current process to execute that command. That's the bridge between the two, and we have a simple graphical user interface to show us the results, or just to give us a friendlier view to run our scripts. I sincerely thank you all for viewing, and I hope you all the best in your learning. This is Nas signing out for this particular journal entry series, and again I say thank you.